For information.
What could have been a major economic shutdown was averted last night after Organised Labour suspended its planned nationwide strike. The indefinite strike, earlier scheduled to start today, has now been suspended for 30 days after meetings and talks with government delegation resulted in a memorandum of understanding. So what's in this MoU and how promising is it? We'll find out later on the show today when NLC President Joe Ajaero joins us live on the program. You're watching Beyond 100 Days with Nifemi Oguntoye. You can join the conversation right now on X, formerly Twitter, using the hashtag Beyond 100 Days. Remember to tag at TVC News NG. In a joint statement issued late Monday by senior government officials and leaders of Organised Labour, several resolutions were made, including a monthly wage increase of 35,000 naira for all workers for the next 6 months. There's also the payment of 25,000 naira for 3 months to 15 million vulnerable households, as well as the provision of 100 billion naira for gas-powered buses to be rolled out for mass transit starting from November. Other resolutions also include the inauguration of a minimum wage committee within the next 1 month from the date of this agreement, as well as the rehabilitation of refineries, among others.
Federal government suspends collection of value-added tax VAT on diesel for 6 months beginning from October 2023. 4. Federal government accepts to vote 100 billion for the provision of high-capacity buses for mass transit in Nigeria. 5. The federal government plans to implement various tax incentive measures for private sector and the general public.
We've had very painstaking and meticulous deliberations, but what is important here is Nigeria, and all of us are committed to ensuring that this country remains united, peaceful, and prosperous.
After 30 days, if these issues are not implemented, we'll revisit all the issues.
We have a signed agreement, and we have signed this agreement with the belief that government will act in utmost good faith. We signed this agreement with the belief that every single item in this agreement are implementable. Every single item in this agreement, we are extremely serious about them, and we wish to also reiterate that we are expecting 100% implementation and not a 99%.
Let's talk about this new memorandum of understanding between the federal government and Organised Labour, as well as the suspended strike. President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero, joins me live on the program from his Abuja office. Comrade, thank you for joining us on the program this evening.
Thank you very much.
So NLC has had a series of engagements with the federal government in the past 4 months without much changes as regard what your requests are. What do you think makes the meeting on Sunday different from the previous ones?
Well, the meeting of Sunday commenced with an agenda already set by Mr. President from his independence broadcast. And we saw some level of seriousness by the level of representation from the cabinet. And then, like any other time or previously, this meeting that commenced on Sunday, shows some level of, anxiety from the side of government. On the basis of that, we decided to equally give them the attention necessary in resolving this matter. That's the only thing that is different. And even for almost 3 months, there was no such meeting that took place. the meeting that took place in the office of the Minister of Labour was more or less a meeting to say, don't go on strike. It's not even a meeting that involved the two parties. So it was a meeting called for to enable the minister appeal to labor leaders. So there was an effort, to resolve the issues, to address the issues, based on some promissory notes, released by the president. So that was it.
We'll talk about the promises in a moment, but help us understand precisely what labor's demands are as we speak. Because the last time you had a nationwide protest, the demand was the removal of what you described as anti-poor policies of this government, including the hike in the pump price of petrol. It would seem those demands have changed, right?
Well, you can see that that you have a cause and effect. Those anti-poor policies, started manifesting to a high dimension with the removal of subsidy and the subsequent increase in pump price of petroleum products. Semantically speaking, removal of subsidy is not the same thing as, increase in pump price of petroleum products. But the very moment subsidy was removed, it went high by almost 200%. Therefore, the consequences, the effects, the after effects, must be addressed. And if they are not addressed, the poor are the people that are the receiving end. So there's no other way to describe it. Where you don't, in the country, you don't have social welfare policies, that impact positively on the poor. A country that you don't have even transport system, you now in a country that you don't have functional hospitals that are for the common man, the schools are not for the common man. Everything went high almost within 1 week, and the poor were suffering. When I say suffering, those that had reserve had to empty it in order to go to work. So, as a labor center, that is conscious of the plight of the poor and the people, our members that are the low income bracket, who have to raise alarm.
Let's talk about the 35,000 naira minimum wage increase. You're asking federal government to urge state governments to also implement some form of wage award for their workers. I'm sure you know how some state governments still struggle as we speak, years after the last minimum wage review. How optimistic are you that workers within the state and local government employ, and even in the private sector, will get this provisional wage?
Well, I don't think that we should give excuses for the governors in the states. I think it has been proved in this country, history has proved that what you need is political will to address all those issues. Almost all the governors try to do something to address the effects of this subsidy removal. But the dimension, the degree at which what they were doing is what is to be considered. Some governors were given 10,000. I know one or two that are given 20,000. And I think there's another one giving 30,000, even before what the federal government want to start doing. Now, that is an admittance, of the fact that things are not going normally and that there's need to do something, a kind of intervention. And the same thing with the private sector you are referring to. One or two banks had even done 100% wage increase. Some other organizations would do better. And in the private sector, there's no history that they are the worst paid in Nigeria. So I doubt why we should doubt that the private sector will not do better or that they will not be able to do this. I think they will adjust. The governors in the states are already adjusting. In fact, even the minimum wage, one of the states, though, that is paying minimum wage of 40,000 before now, are doing it based on political will and their decision to do that. It doesn't mean that they are receiving the highest allocation. However, what the governors were receiving, as at April, has doubled as of today. Almost everything that was accruing as a result of removal of subsidy is being transferred to the governors as allocation to them. So they should be able to plug this back in making sure that the consequences, that arose as a result of removal of subsidy are addressed and properly too.
I understand your position, but my question is, are you appealing to state, local governments and private sector, or you also intend to enforce this in the coming days?
Well, the issue is that it's evident that they have to do something. And what I try to explain to you is that some of them are doing something, though not enough, which is an acknowledgement of the fact that all is not well and there is need for an intervention. It's not a question of appealing. What we have set is like setting the benchmark for them to operate. I expect some of them to pay more than what we have mentioned now for the federal. And those of them, even in terms of wages, there are some states that pay the same thing with the federal. So it's not a question of appealing. There's a reality knocking already.
So the agreement, we seem to have a 30-day window now within which Labour expects government to march towards with action where this agreement is concerned. But there's also what this agreement calls the dictates of social dialogue, which you have committed to, particularly in future engagements with government. I'm wondering what that really entails, and is there an alternative to strike now within the context of this social dialogue?
Well, ordinarily, social dialogue includes the engagement. What we did was a demonstration of social dialogue, But where one party decides not to talk, then it becomes a threat to social dialogue. And that was what brought us to the point of threats to strike. It is inability of the parties to communicate to one another, or where you have a kind of monologue. People are talking to themselves. You will agree with me that before now, all the other arms of government, all the committees of government, we are not talking. After the protest, they were not talking. They were only interested in saying there is a court order. Even after the 2 days warning strike, they were not talking until now. So probably if we had engaged, and explored, the principles of social dialogue, we wouldn't have gotten to this level, of almost shutting down the whole country, and the consequences that could have, arisen from it. So that's why, from the ILO, it is recommended that employers, employees, social dialogues, must explore social dialogue as an alternative to breakdown of negotiation and talks.
Is there a sense to which you agree that both Labour and government carry the burden of making this work without shutting down activities, if you consider the economic implication at such a time like this, because that's the essence of the strike in the first place, because of the burden that the poor now carry. And it will be much more burden if we are not able to resolve this matter within what you call social dialogue.
Well, if I must go through, look at what you are saying, each time we want to go on strike, they will say the economy will suffer. What has happened is making the economy to suffer. Increase in the pump price of petroleum products has made the economy to suffer. In fact, in some states, workers are now going to work 2 days or 3 days. Productivity has nosedived. There's no money for people to buy. Each time workers are paid, or when workers, you see the market bubbling, they go to the market, the purchasing power will be there. A situation whereby the workers' earning goes into transportation and nobody buys, manufacturers and producers will not have any money. So it's not only when you call for a strike for 1 day or 2 days that economy or productivity suffers. So in either way, some factories, some industries can no longer operate as a result of withdrawal of subsidy or even increase in pump price of PMS. So that is what is important. We should not be looking at the effect on the economy from only stoppage of work. Some other actions, including this, affect the economy adversely.
So there's also the political dimension to it, comrade. There are some who would say that the body language of NLC before this election, identifying with one of the presidential candidates, may have also, inspired the position of NLC, because your union seemed to have taken a more drastic step, rather than that of the TUC. How do you answer the question of political affiliation at such a time like this?
Well, I don't know why you wanted the NLC to be apolitical. Because the NLC,
maybe you can educate me on how that works.
From day one, have been forming political parties. From even around 1918, there was a political party. In 1945, Michael Imodu and others formed a political party. In the 1960s, Imodu and Ekong formed another political party, which was disrupted by the Civil War. In 1987, Pascal Bafia and others formed a political party. The current Labour Party you are seeing was formed by Adams Oshomole in 2003. And then it has been on, until we met it. We don't have any apology having a political party, because the two existing political parties cannot accommodate us. Tell the people that are saying this of affiliation, it is only in Labour Party that the son of a mechanic or a mechanic can run for election. And I want to challenge you to go up to prove it that even in the current National Assembly, people who are Okada riders through the Labour Party are there. And it is a forum for us. So if anybody is talking of political affiliation, we don't have any sympathy for it. All over the world, whether in Britain or whatever, you have Labour Party.
You're saying that NLC hasn't found a way to separate itself from Labour Party, and are you saying that wouldn't affect your responsibility as a pressure group and also your ability to approach this matter without political bias?
The NLC is not running the Labour Party. The NLC formed a party for Nigerians. All the 30-something members of the National Assembly, and none of them is from the NLC. Just like any other political party. Even the presidential candidate of the Labour Party is not a Labour man. It's a party formed like any other party for Nigerians to belong to. None of us is a chairman of the party. None of us is a secretary of the party. So why all this? In 2003 or thereabout, we had an alliance with AC and AD to produce Adams. So it wasn't a problem there for us to have an alliance with the current day APC to produce somebody, and instead of we to have our own political party. So on these issues, we are not repentant about it. We have our own political party for Nigerians to belong. The same thing with other parties. So if
I'm just wondering, let's say, since we're talking political parties now, do you think that NLC will be able to do its job if its party's candidate was president?
We are doing our job very well, because members of the NLC are free to belong to Labour Party and other parties. My colleague, who was the deputy president of NLC with me, get this straight, is the current governor of Kebbi State, and he's in APC. The deputy governor of Niger State was our chairman under APC. He's in he's in APC and he's a deputy governor all over. Those who want to belong to Labour Party can belong to Labour Party. This whole issue of political affiliation, we own the Labour Party. That's a fact. So what are we going to do about it?
Let's get back to labor issues. We'll find some time to discuss politics later. You recently faulted the ban of commercial motorcycles known as Okada by some state governments and even the FCTA. State governments have given reasons in the past, and these reasons range from crime, recklessness on the road, to not supposedly being in the transport master plan of their states. Are you saying that these reasons aren't relevant?
So when you talk of transport master plan of a state, and you say Okada and those ones are not part of it, It's because you didn't design a route for them. It's because you didn't even have a mass transit program that will take care of people in that state. It's because you don't have a subsidized rate for transportation. Therefore, people must find a way to commute. I've traveled in some parts of the country, of the world. There are people that use bicycle. There is normally a track meant for bicycle users. If you reach China, it's like the normal thing. You know, even in the offices, there's a park meant for people that use bicycle and even a bike. Now, if you now have what you call a transport master plan in Abuja, and then everybody is using Uber or everybody is using taxi, and I can't afford it, what do? I will use the one I can afford. If you have a program in Abuja that nobody has job, and people feel that they can create job by themselves, and they decide to use Okada, or to use Okada to earn a living, and then we are talking of crime. Would there be more crime when those people who are riding Okada are not doing anything, or when they are using the Okada to convey people? How many places have you seen real robbery with Okada? People still use vehicles. You know, people use vehicles of crime. So why have we not banned vehicles and other means of commuter? Now you can regulate it if you so use. But the aspect of collecting all Okadas and destroying them is something that is unimaginable. Especially when you look at the index, you know, the poverty index in the country. And you now say everybody must have his own private car. And there's no policy for people to have their own private car. You know, people must equally find a way of accommodating the poor and the less privileged. You know, in a country like this, you can't have everybody having a jeep, having a better means of, you know, moving from one distance to the other. So it is wrong for us to just seek to eliminate the poor. The same way they are demolishing houses and what they call shanties, which they say is not in the proper master plan. If you have a master plan, you can still have a place allocated to the poor where they can live. If you don't have a place allocated to them and they're looking for shelter and you destroy it, you can't even relocate them, we are saying that it's an anti-poor policy.
All right. Does this mean that the NLC is planning to demand that these services be restored in the affected states? Are we hoping to see a protest or, you know, a planned strike in this regard?
Well, the Okada Writers Association, you know, are members of the NLC. We are still interfacing with them, you know, and then I can tell you that some of them have had audience with some of these people, including the intended meeting with the Minister of the FCT, for them to see from the side of the poor, for them to see from the side of this class of people. Not just them, but the people that patronize them. You know, if you know thousands and millions of people that patronize them, you will discover that they don't have any other source apart from using the Okada. So if there is proper reasoning, you know, there could be a balance. But if it is just that the poor must die, then too bad.
We have to go now, comrade. In a minute, you have suspended this strike for 30 days. I'm just wondering how you intend to measure government's performance, you know, along the line of the agreements you've had, particularly in the area of refineries, issues like state government and local governments, and even the private sector given a wage increase, and some other issues. There's also the CNG-powered buses that the president admitted that there was a long process, but they're doing all they can to shorten that process. How do you intend to measure government performance in 30 days?
Well, the issue is not measuring government performance in 30 days. There are stages that must be followed. Now, like the one we are talking of refineries, what was stated there was that there will be a joint visit to the refinery, especially Port Harcourt refinery, which Mr. President promised will be ready by December. Now, the essence of that is to go within these 30 days to find out the level of preparedness for us to start for it to start operation by December. That is it. It's not because it will start production within 30 days. The same thing with CNG. You know, CNG buses will equally follow up with the processes, you know, of sending for them, buying, importing those facilities, and the level, you know, of performance, in these contracts awarded. The same thing with the state governments and private sector. As of today, we have sent out letters to our colleagues, our state chairmen and secretaries, all our industrial unions, for them to start the process of engagement. It is expected that those that are serious can finish negotiation around this line within the next 1 month, or some would have gone to advanced stage, and you will see that action is not only done, but it seems to be on. So those are some of the measures that we can look at, and within the next 1 month, the implementation of even what has been approved by the federal government and others would have been there. There are other issues that have 2 weeks, for us to get back, and those ones will measure them to see whether they are followed or not. I think it's important that that clause of 30 days should be there.
President, Nigeria Labour Congress, Comrade Joe Ajaero, thank you so much for talking to us on Beyond 100 Days.
Thank you. Chairmen and secretaries, all our industrial unions, for them to start the process of engagement. It is expected that those that are serious can finish negotiation around this line within the next 1 month, or some would have gone to advanced stage, and you will see that action is not only done, but it seems to be on. So those are some of the measures that we can look at, and within the next 1 month, the implementation of even what has been approved by the federal government and others would have been there. There are other issues that have 2 weeks, for us to get back, and those ones will measure them to see whether they are followed or not. I think it's important that that clause of 30 days should be there.
President, Nigeria Labour Congress, Comrade Joe Ajaero, thank you so much for talking to us on Beyond 100 Days.